Sensory paths have become very popular in a lot of schools around our area. Using vinyl stickers on the floor that you can create yourself, or you can purchase them on places like Etsy, you can create a series of like obstacle courses for students to do to help them get their wiggles out, get some of that sensory input, and then go back to class. This is a great option for schools that don't have space for a full motor lab or a sensory room, and it gives all teachers the opportunity and the options to send their kids through the sensory path to provide some of that input versus using a motor lab just for the kids with special ed or just for the kids who qualify for OT/PT services. In this case, you could use this hallway activity for all students, and it helps some of the students who may not be identified at the moment as needing that sensory input. But if teachers notice that they're starting to get a little wiggly or that they're not focusing or paying attention, they could send kids to do this in the hallway, or students could even ask for it when they realize that they need it. There are so many ways every day that we can incorporate sensory activities into our day. We can schedule motor lab and sensory room times. We can have sensory bins and activities throughout the day. We can schedule quiet time each day with soft music. And I've seen some teachers do this like right after lunchtime, because lunch and recess can be very stimulating for some of our students. So increasing or adding in a quiet time with soft music and maybe like looking at pictures of a book or something like that into our day. And you can also give access to calm down corners before behavior occurs, so that students, we're getting ahead of the behavior. We're being proactive. When we see a student is starting to get frustrated or fidgety or anything like that, we can prompt them to request time in the calm down corner. So here's some other evidence-based practices that will become in very useful when implementing sensory tools into your classroom. Some of these include reinforcement, modeling. We want to make sure that we model how to use the motor lab, how to use the sensory room or the sensory corner, how to use fidgets. We have to teach our students how to use these tools, otherwise they will probably use them inappropriately, and it will become more of a behavior problem, especially when they're in the gen ed classroom. We hear that a lot. We will say this student would benefit from using a Chewy or from using a fidget, and the gen ed teacher will be like, well, if I give him one, then everybody has to have one, or if I give him one, then he's just going to throw it around the room. Probably so, if you don't teach them how to use it. So it's very important that we use modeling or video modeling to teach our students how to appropriately use their tools. You can also use prompting, use visual prompts such as a visual schedule for motor lab, or using visual or using verbal prompts, remember, keep our Chewy in our mouth or on our pencil, or whatever it is. You can also use antecedent-based interventions such as choice making. You can use contingency maps to show if I do this, then I get this. If I do this, then I do not get this. You can also use functional communication training, which we'll talk more about in a minute. You can use behavior contracts for, how I will use my squishy, or how I will participate in motor lab, or how I will choose my alternative seating. You can also use visual schedules and visual rules and descriptions, which we will talk more about those in just a few. Here's some different ways that you can give choices in your classroom when it comes to sensory tools. You can ask a student, do you want gum or a sucker? Do you want this Chewy or that one? Do you want the bouncy chair or the wobbly stool? Do you want this kind of swing or that kind of swing? Would you rather do push-ups or planks? Would you rather go to a different room or use headphones? You always want to make sure that whatever you are providing, whatever choices you're providing, it is available. So don't offer for them to go to a different room if that's not really a choice and there's not a different room for them to go to. We can incorporate self-management into our sensory tools and motor lab and sensory room activities by teaching students to identify how they're feeling, what they are needing, and how to obtain it appropriately. So helping students to identify, I feel tired, I can take a walk, do jumping jacks, or jump on the trampoline, and then asking their teacher appropriately for whatever it is that they're needing. Another example is, I feel hyper and out of control. I can use the weighted ball, the swing, I can ask for a hug, I can get a squeeze with the yoga ball, anything like that. We want to make sure that we are helping our students identify how they're feeling, identify what they need, and then obtain it appropriately. I know a lot of OTs in the area use zones of regulation to help their students identify how they're feeling, and then they will also list what are some blue zone activities, green zone, yellow, and red zone activities, so that their students are able to make those connections and be able to see, okay, I'm feeling tired, I need this. I'm feeling angry, I need this. So also, something that I find very, very important for these sensory tools and activities is using visual supports to create expectations and boundaries. So you can use schedules, you can use visual supports for stations, you can use visual rules, and you want to make sure that you are setting rules and expectations for behaviors when participating in sensory activities or using alternative seating. Just like I said before, if you don't teach your learner how to use these items and these tools appropriately, they will probably misuse them and become a big behavior issue. So here's some examples of visual supports that I've created for my classroom and for other teachers in the area. So a sensory corner choice board can be displayed at your sensory corner or in your motor lab or wherever you have your sensory tools. This can also be used, you can cut these visuals out and use them on token boards so that students can earn their favorite sensory tools. You can also use it as communication pieces so that when a student needs a Chewy, they can request a Chewy. You don't just give it to them, they can request it. You can also use a motor lab schedule like the one that I've created here. You can also use motor lab rules like the example here. The sensory choice board and the motor lab schedule are both located on our website under our free resource library. Let's review. What is not one way to increase sensory activities into your everyday routine? A, incorporating more paper pencil activities. B, sensory bin and sensory activities. C, schedule a quiet time with soft music into your day. Or D, access to a calm down corner before behaviors occur. Incorporating more pencil paper activities into your day is not a good way to increase sensory input through activities in your everyday routine. Next question. I can expect my learners to know how to appropriately use sensory materials without specific visuals and instructions. False. We cannot expect our students to just know how to use them. We have to teach them. You may be wondering, why do I need to teach my students to advocate for themselves and their sensory needs? You might think, I know what they need. Why can't I just give it to them? I know she needs her headphones, so why can't I just give them to her? We want our students to be successful in all environments and not just in our classrooms when we are present. There are so many times that, especially in my first couple years of teaching, that I had a student who had severe sensory needs and I knew she needed her headphones at lunchtime. And so for the first 6 months, I was constantly running her headphones down to lunch because I was like, oh no, she needs these or she's gonna lose it. But after a while, I realized, okay, well, what if I'm not there? What if it's not me running them down to her every day? She has to remember and she has to learn how to grab them herself and take them to lunch with her. Sometimes I would need to remind her, like, hey, did you grab your headphones? And she'd be like, oh no, I forgot them, and she'd go get them. But putting them in a place that was accessible for her and saying, you're going to lunch. Do you remember what you need when you go to lunch? And she'd be like, oh yeah, I need my headphones. Silly me. And we would always remind her to get her headphones. We want to make sure that we are setting our students up for success. So just because we know their triggers, they may be in an environment where an adult or a teacher does not know their triggers, their likes or dislikes. We want to teach our students to identify how they're feeling, what they need, and know how to assess or access or request what they're needing. For example, in our classroom, we always had Chewies and headphones available, so our students were able to access them independently. The next school, classroom, daycare, caregiver may not know that the student benefits from these items. So if the student doesn't know how to request them when they need them, then they could exhibit problem behaviors, and the caregiver wouldn't know what they're needing or how to help them. It's our job to create opportunities for our students to request the items that they need and maintain the appropriate behavior by giving them the item that they need or showing them how to access them themselves. Let's take a look at this scenario. Think about the principles of behavior and the appropriate behavior we want to reinforce. So in this example, this boy thinks, I need something to chew on. He's having a sensory need to chew. So he goes to his teacher and he says, Chewy, please. And in return, he gets his Chewy. And then in the future, he asks for his Chewy when he needs something to bite instead of biting his friends because he was given the sensory input that he needed. So in the other example, he bites his friends and his teacher says, here, use this Chewy instead of biting your friends. And in the future, because he doesn't know how to request what he needs, he bites because that's how he got the sensory input that he needed and the teacher gave him the Chewy. So we want to make sure that instead of just throwing a tool at our student, that we're teaching them to say, Chewy, please, and then use the Chewy. Here's another example. So in this example, the student thinks, man, this movie is too loud. So they scream and cry and the teacher gives them their headphones. And so in the future, the student never learned how to communicate that the movie was too loud and they never learned how to ask for their headphones. So in the future, they'll scream and cry more to get what they need because the teacher just gave them their headphones. But in the first example, or in the good part, the student says, headphones please, and they use their headphones. So in the future, I asked for my headphones when it's too loud instead of screaming and crying because I got what I needed by asking. So when we are teaching our students to use functional communication to get the sensory item that they need or in any area of their communication life, these are some ways that we can do it. So we're going to recognize when our student will be or is triggered by a sensory event or overstimulation, or recognize when they've been sitting too long and they're starting to get fidgety, etc. So the first thing we do is it's on us to recognize, okay, there is a problem or there's about to be a problem. So you can tell you that your student's trying to cover their ears from loud noises or they're about to go to a very noisy lunchroom. You see your student is losing focus and starting to get fidgety. You can see your student is pulling at their shoe and starting to get agitated. So what do? Number 2, before the behavior occurs, we are going to verbally identify what we see. So, oh man, that lunchroom is so loud. I can tell the noise is too loud for you. It hurts my ears too. Man, we've been working so hard and sitting for quite a few minutes. Your body is telling me you're ready, you're getting antsy and you need a break. Wow, it looks like those shoes might be hurting your feet. So we're going to prompt them by giving them a replacement behavior or giving them choices. So you can grab your headphones before you go, or you can ask a teacher to help you find them. You can say, headphones please, or just grab them. You can take a walk, use a sensory tool, or go to the sensory room. You can say, will you fix my shoe please, or shoes off please, and then put them in your cubby. So then we want to make sure that we reinforce them repeating our prompt or by asking appropriately. So thank you for letting me know you need your headphones. Here they are. Are you ready to walk to lunch? Let's go. Great job asking to take a walk. That's a great choice. Do you want to walk with me or Miss Marshall? Thank you for asking to take your shoes off and putting them in your cubby. Great job. Remember, before lunch, we need to put them back on. Or you can say, thank you for asking me to fix your shoes. I would love to help. I hate when my socks slip too. We want to make sure that in the middle of all of this, that we are accepting any communication method that is appropriate. Some of our students may show us a picture. They may use a speech-generated device. They may use verbal speech. They may use sign language. However, our students are showing us and requesting that they need help or that they need a sensory tool, we want to make sure that we honor all methods of communication. That's appropriate. Screaming or throwing their shoes at you is not appropriate, but if they, on their speech-generated device, said shoes, then we want to honor that and say, oh, thank you so much for letting me know your shoes are bothering you. I can help you. And, you know, when I say these things, you guys might think like, oh my gosh, like, does she really talk like that? Yes, I 100% did. In my classroom, I constantly was saying things like, oh, that's no big deal, or, oh, thank you so much for asking. When we use positive uplifting tones like that with our students, it creates a fun and exciting environment for them. And it also creates positive relationships with our students. And we want to make sure that we are maintaining and increasing our positive relationships with students by always making sure that we listen to their needs and their concerns, and that we do what it takes to help them fix them. If you see a learner is struggling and needs a sensory tool, it's best practice to give them what they need as fast as possible. True or false? False. Remember, we just talked about we want to make sure that we are prompting our student to request the sensory tool that they need. Why is it important to teach our learners to advocate for themselves? A, we want them to be successful in all environments, not just with us. B, self-advocating is a big trend right now. C, self-advocating means that they can do all of the life skills necessary to live. Or D, we want them to communicate more. A, we want them to be successful in all environments. If we never teach our students to ask for what they need, and we always just recognize when they need something and give it to them, then we're not teaching them to be successful at home, at Walmart, or in a different classroom. When teaching students to ask for what they need, we only want to accept verbal speech as a communication method. False. We want to accept all appropriate methods of communication as acceptable. Okay guys, to wrap up our workshop, you guys are going to do your final project. So for your final project, if you go on Blackboard, there is an assignment that's titled Final Project, and you will be selecting a student that you have in your classroom and filling out the information, answering the ASI checklist that you got through Affirm. I've kind of adapted it for our assignment. And then the last thing you're going to do is you're going to use a planning sheet similar to the one that you were given on the Affirm module. And you're going to use it for your classroom and for the student you've selected. When you're all finished, you're going to take this to an OT that you have at your school or your district and have them give you feedback on it, as well as like some feedback for the assignment or for the activities that you've selected. If you do not have an OT or don't have access to one, just put that in your notes. Let us know that that's the case, and we can act as your OT for this assignment. So, if you have any questions, you can feel free to email us and we can answer them. It should be pretty straightforward and pretty simple, but let us know if you have any questions. And I think that's all. See you later. Don't forget to check out our website for all of our free resources, our fact sheet, our video library, and our online workshops. We have so many other workshops just like the one you're taking today on so many different topics. There's a lot to learn. We also have a video library that gives you the lowdown on graphing and all different other kinds of strategies that we use in the classroom. Check out our fact sheets for more information about some of these things. They're perfect for printing and handing out to paras and using in trainings, or handing to parents to use in training, parent training. And then our free resource library has so many different visuals, and some of the ones that you saw today in the workshop, they're available for free to download from our free resource library. Thank you so much for attending this workshop on sensory tools in the classroom. I'm so glad I was able to talk with you guys today about all the different sensory tools, the sensory senses, and different inputs, and also the different tools that you could use in your classroom. Don't forget to check out our other workshops listed to the side over here that are workshops that would pair great with this one and will help complement the things that you learned in this workshop.